Okay, so you have 3 short IDs, and I was going to give this information, but we've had a weird turn of events the last few days, so I'm going to give you. All right, so you have to answer 2. Oh, I'm sorry. How many? There are 2 choices. You must choose one of these 2, and then the other ones you can choose from a bigger list. But you must choose at least one of either the Nullification Crisis, which is all the issue of tariff and all that, and or the free labor wage slavery controversy. Those 2 different views on what capitalism was creating. And don't forget, free labor, wage slavery, they both will kind of go into 2 different parties. Those who thought the system was good with like free labor, more Whigs, wage slavery, more Democrats. But these are differing views on capitalism. You must answer at least one of those 2. Now, you can answer both of them, but at least one of them. Your other choices for your essays will be, and I'm just going to tell you all the choices. I'm being too nice, do you think?
No.
I want good short IDs. So it's going to be Indian removal. Capitalism, kind of focusing on how the inequalities, remember economies of scale. The bank war, did I already say that?
No.
Bank war and Jacksonian democracy. Sound good? You have 3 total. Those are your choices. I'm looking at, I think there's 25 or 24 multiple choice. So we should be done in, what do you think, 6 minutes? 6, 7 minutes, give or take.
What does it talk about Jackson's ideas?
A little bit about like how the changes are happening, how Jackson's ideals molded into it. Sound good?
Yeah, wait, so it's 1 from the 2.
Yeah. Yeah, but you can also answer, you have to do 3 total. You can answer both of these if you want.
Oh, okay.
But you must answer at least one of those 2.
Okay. It was, you can't remember both Jacksonian boxes.
Capitalism and inequality. And remember that about not only does it, kind of focus as well, but the big thing is economies of scale, because capital is so expensive, all those fixed costs. And the thing is, once you buy land or you buy a business, doesn't matter if the value of the land goes up or sales at your business go up or down, you still have to make the loan payments. Always got to make the payments, and that's the thing. So did we get to here? So let's read the nullification really quickly. Nullification, that's Jackson or Calhoun was claiming the tariff was unconstitutional and the state shouldn't obey it, even though tariffs are constitutional. They just don't want the tariff. But it wasn't so much about the tariff. Even though I showed you how tariffs always raise prices with this wonderful tic-tac-toe-like board, but Calhoun's real goal was to do what? It protects slavery, but how to do it? The nullification would do what to the other states of the South? This is important. Yeah, they would unify the South. He wanted a pro-slavery party. So it's not just to protect slavery. It's to unify the South to protect slavery. The Democrats and the Whigs were national parties. So to Calhoun's idea, he couldn't trust Northern Democrats and couldn't trust Northern Whigs because they won't really be pro-slavery enough. So we'll unify the South. Even if our population is low, we'll have the Senate, at least have a tie, and to make sure nothing will happen. Did we get to this Webster and Hayne debate? Didn't we just start mentioning it?
Yeah.
Did we get to the dinner?
No, we spoke on Jefferson Dinner.
Well, the Jefferson Dinner in 1900 was the first, I'm sorry, get my name right. 1830. This dinner. And it was going to be to kind of say that Jefferson is the ideological founder of the Democratic Party, which he was in a lot of ways. The Democratic Party, like everything's all over the place. And soon the Democrats would have the Jefferson-Jackson dinner down the road. The weird thing about the Party for Democracy and the Common Man was also started in many ways by slaveholders. So there's weird contradictions in the country. Well, The same guy who spoke up, oh, almost forgot one thing. For Indian removal, the court case, Cherokee versus Georgia said that the American Indian tribes, if they signed a treaty, what were they called? Meaning that their laws, yes. Yeah, yeah. It's a weird kind of. It's kind of a hard legal precedent that domestic dependent nations. If you know anybody who does state law and has to deal with the reservations, if they're especially a lawyer, wow, it's complex. You get two different systems. Yeah. For domestic dependent nation?
Yeah, like domestic dependent.
It's not a huge difference, but domestic should come first. Because it's implying that it's within the borders of the United States. So they're still technically under U.S. federal law. So they're dependent upon the United States, but they're still a nation within the state. But it doesn't mean that much. If you get it mixed up on the task for Indian removal, I will not. So at this dinner, Hayne got up and spoke a little bit about tariffs, and it was a pretty provocative speech. But then Jackson got up and said, let's do a toast for Jefferson. And Jackson got up and held his glass of champagne. And as they're doing, we're doing a toast. And he's whatever platitudes. And then he got near the end, and he fixed Calhoun and glared at him and said, our federal union, it must be preserved. Everybody knew what that meant. Jackson was furious at Calhoun for his talk. He hated Calhoun, the talk of secession, because nullification could lead to war. This is a threat. And Calhoun, according to Jackson's supporters, stood up and was so nervous, he was shaking his glass and champagne was coming out. I don't know if that's true, because Calhoun fought a number of duels too. But Calhoun responded with, our liberty, the federal union next to our liberty, the most dear. Meaning the union's important, but you infringe on my liberty, in this context, liberty to have slaves, we'll blow it up. And Calhoun, right after this Jefferson dinner, he'd be the first vice president to resign. So for 2 years, there's no vice president. He resigned, and the Constitution was not clear what to do about it. That would not be resolved until 1967. One other vice president would resign. Anybody know who? Spiro Agnew, Richard Nixon's vice president. Even though he was not involved in the whole series of crimes committed by Nixon, we lumped together as something called Watergate. Agnew was taking bribes as governor of Maryland, and he got caught. Literally paper bags full of money. He was just delivered to him, and he got caught. And he resigned. So he fit in perfectly with the Nixon administration. This cartoon, I have no idea what it's about. I'm still trying to figure it out. It's wonderful, though. And so they have, Jackson is like a giraffe, and they have various characters, like here's Henry Clay, and that's supposed to be Daniel Webster. That's Calhoun. I think that's VanBuren. I have no idea what's going on. No, not even the remotest clue, but it's awesome. By the way, mint drops were really popular candy at that time. So, mint drops. I have no idea. It's great. So, that is leading directly to a couple things. First off, I don't know why it's doing these weird transitions. The kitchen cabinet. Jackson came to rely more and more upon informal advisors who were more loyal to him. Some were very, very, very confident, like VanBuren or Thomas Hart Benton. Some were kind of cronies. Roger Taney was one of them. We'll come back to Taney. But VanBuren is going to become the most important. He will soon become Jackson's vice president in the next election. But here's it, mocking them as a bunch of commoners as the kitchen cabinet, all breaking the various utensils over their head. You know, look what happens when you get the commoners together. But Jackson would come to rely upon them because he realized he could not trust the aristocrats like Calhoun. And this goes back a little bit to the eat malaria. And so with that, what's coming up is potential civil war, and will be personified by a little planned demolition. That's pretty well done, isn't it? I guess if you're going to blow up some smokestacks, let's make it spectacular, huh? So, the tariff conflict, this is the nullification crisis. It's going to be about the tariff. Don't forget, it's all about unifying the South for slavery. Let's say to protect slavery. So in 1832, Congress did lower the tariff, but not enough for Calhoun. Actually, Calhoun, who would come back to Washington, D.C. as a senator, it didn't matter. He felt he had no choice but to use nullification. To him, the crisis was now. If we don't stop the North now, someday they might attack slavery. So, in 1833, South Carolina would issue the Ordinance of Nullification, basically saying we will nullify the tariff. We will not allow the enforcement of the tariff in Charleston Harbor. And now what was Jackson's response? Well, I almost forgot one more thing too. Then Calhoun's supporters, because remember, its plan is to unify the other southern states. And South Carolina thought if we do it, this will encourage all the other states to join in. There'll be a convention in beautiful Nashville, Tennessee, to unify the South. And they sent word out to all southern states, slave states, to send representatives to Nashville. Why Nashville? Because that's near Jackson's home. So this was a slap in the face to Jackson. Yes? Yeah, they rejected the tariff. We will not enforce the tariff in our borders. We will not allow it. Yeah.
So Calhoun didn't want the tariff?
No.
Okay.
But the big thing about Calhoun, he didn't want the tariff. The big thing is he was hoping that would be the issue to unify the South.
Okay.
Find an issue he thought he could unify. He would try a few other things down the road. He would spend the rest of his life trying to find a way to unify the South to protect slavery. He did not want civil war. He did not want it. But if the federal government tries to enforce the tariff, what does that mean? Civil war. It's war. Because the South Carolina Ordinance of Nullification says South Carolina will secede, and secession means war. The Union will fall apart. So this is, talk about a dangerous game of chicken. They're going to blow the Union up to get rid of the tariff to defend slavery. Now, Jackson's reaction is what you would expect Jackson to react. His first statement was basically, well, damnation, I'll hang them all. He was furious. Traitors will not be allowed to destroy this country. And yes, that's treason. That is committing treason right there. Jackson will not allow this. So he said he would personally lead our tiny little army and destroy the traitors. And Congress would respond with Jackson's encouragement of the Force Bill, which said, we'll enforce federal laws. That means we have to use the army. But the most important thing this did, though, and Jackson doesn't get enough credit for how deft he was. Yes, he's furious, but they're going to use the Navy to collect the tariff. And therefore, they can collect it off the shore of Charleston, out here. So they won't have the provocative action of trying to enforce the tariff on the shores of South Carolina, in Charleston. This is really smart. Hey, we're still going to enforce it, but we'll do it offshore. This will give breathing space. Jackson made it very clear. Treason will not be allowed. But we can find a way out of this and can avoid civil war. Because if the Civil War happens, or as this cartoon shows, South Carolina pulling the Union down, it's over. the United States would be done. The United States would lose the Civil War if it happened. The South would have won. It would have won. And there'd be no United States. They'd be broken up into things, who knows. 1850, the South would have won. And the United States almost lost in the Civil War. It was close, but the United States won the Civil War. It was close. So, they would respond, and at the same time, Jackson began to negotiate with members of Congress a lower tariff. Because he wanted actually a lower tariff than the one that was passed in 32 also. So we'll lower the tariff, saying if we don't, the country will go into tyranny. This cartoon, here we have nullification, South Carolina ordinance, treason, civil war, deception, disunion, to despotism. Nullification is the road to tyranny. But Calhoun really thought he won. And Calhoun, very overconfident, had South Carolina turn the tariff down, saying, we're not going to accept it, blowing up Jackson's negotiation. So Jackson is trying to find a way out of this while still saying, I will not allow treason. Calhoun really thought he had won. And this is a problem if you're surrounded by people who all agree with you. Because you soon believe everyone agrees with you. As it turns out, no, you might just be your little circle of friends, your clique. And that's what happened here. The rest of the South, they didn't see this as a victory. They saw this as Jackson means it, and he's going to crush us. And they all panicked. And the convention fell apart. Nobody went. Calhoun was decisively defeated, and he didn't even know it at first. It's over. This was a disaster for Calhoun. Humiliation. Yes?
It's the Nashville Convention.
Yeah, the Nashville Convention. Henry Clay then would organize another compromise there. But this one actually didn't cut rates as much as Jackson's original compromise. So another humiliation for Calhoun, but South Carolina had to accept it. Ironically, and I think this is actually kind of funny, it also shows just how desperate they were and how humiliated, then South Carolina would turn around and nullify the force bill. Which of course didn't matter. Like, oh yeah, we'll nullify that, take that. They lost. A horrible defeat. Jackson saved the Union. The problem is this. Nullification is off the table. It's done. So what's the only other way the South can threaten? They threaten what? AKA secession. You're exactly right. Secession equals war. Secession's it. So in 1850, when the crisis hit there, they threatened secession. And then when Lincoln was elected, South Carolina seceded. That's war. And there'll be a new breed of politicians who weren't so anxious to avoid war. Maybe because they thought they wouldn't be hurt by it. So with this, the Union is saved, but just barely. And the underlying problem would be solved. By the way, here's this little poem/song called Jackson and the Nullifiers. And it's worse than you think. It's just this weird thing about him standing down the South. But to Jackson, here we have the wealthy aristocrats like Calhoun wanting to impose their will on the people, nullification. And here's Jackson standing up for the common man, for the democracy, and fighting against it. But here's a cartoon from 1861, and it's attacking the North and the president at that time, James Buchanan, when the Civil War began. Here's Jackson standing down Calhoun. But there was no Jackson. It's James Buchanan. And President Buchanan, waiting for Lincoln's inauguration, Buchanan literally hid under his desk, fearful of assassination. So Jackson said, no traitors, I'll fight them all. Buchanan hid. So when Lincoln was inaugurated, Civil War was already gone. And there's a really big, or there's a definite, a big correlation there. Jackson saved the Union. So here's a statue of Jackson in New Orleans. And then you battle New Orleans, it makes sense you'd have a statue there. This is in St. Charles Square, like the picture. Pretty nice, wasn't it? That's a beautiful day. But when the United States, when the Union took New Orleans in 1862 during the Civil War, General Butler, the Union commander in New Orleans, had this chiseled in this statue of Jackson. A Jackson comment from 1833. The Union must and shall be preserved. And so they turned this statue into a Union statue in the heart of the South. And that is a way to say that Jackson was a Union man. And the United States will prevail. And so that statue, it's very interesting. That's in the middle of South Carolina. People sometimes forget that this was a big Union, U.S. issue. Really cool statue. The river is just this direction in New Orleans. It's New Orleans. Should we go? Anyone been to New Orleans? Few people? Yeah, really neat place. That leads to number 3, the other big issue. At the same time, all these 3 things happen. So this is Jackson's view, the bank war. And here it is, the big money Eastern elite, the bank. These rich corporations, well, actually, the only corporation, the bank, against the common man that Jackson stands for, AKA the democracy. Who will prevail, the people or the elite? I know the elite are people too, but just go with me on that. By the way, here's the Bank of the United States now. It's a private bank, the First National Bank. It's right across the street from Washington, D.C. Notice the big columns of the classical or Republican style. That was the style. Remember that. We'll come back to that image in a second. Well, we get to Jackson's view of economics. And I'm doing this as somebody looking back using hindsight. This was more just a gut feeling by Jackson. But to Jackson, he understood that economics, how people make a living, that's politics. Governments make the rules. Governments print the currency. Governments decide what and what will not be enforced. Governments can pick winners. Therefore, economics is democracy. And are we going to allow a tiny group to decide whether or not we starve? Whether or not we go into debt and lose our farm? Are we going to allow that or let the people decide? Now, his prescription, he really didn't have one. He just knew this concentration of wealth was incredibly dangerous. As he saw it, he is carrying on what Jefferson believed. So, the big fear, capitalism and monopolies. Capitalism has a tendency to go to monopolies. Jackson did not fear the market. Jackson did not fear industry per se. He feared the concentration of wealth owning this. There's a lot of people who do not understand that Jackson did not fear the market. I'm saying that because I just read What Nation Has Been Wrought. This one of the most famous books about this era by a historian by the name of Howe. It was really interesting, well done, but he kept saying Jackson feared the market. And I was like, no. Yes. Yeah, this. And so Jackson saw this as a political battle, which it is. Business, money, power, all political. By the way, that means those who have a lot of political power or economic power want average people to stay out of politics, because then they can do what they want. So, with that, so he's just terrified of debt. Why? Well, don't forget, all farmers are in debt. Of course, this is the United States. Everyone is debt. What is there, $14 trillion of overhanging debt right now on people? That's more money than I make in a year. Can you believe that? 14 trillion. Okay, I can't even wrap my mind around $1 trillion. It's hard to wrap your mind around $1 million, you know. Trillions beyond, it's just impossible. And also speculation, those get-rich scams. And a lot of times people would borrow money to try to buy land and get rich. You know, Jackson lived in Tennessee. He saw the land speculators. That's part of the reason he hated George Washington. George Washington was a land speculator. And as he saw it, got us into war and almost economic ruin by speculating in land. He was a little off on that, but that's what he believed, and it's an element of truth. So as he saw it, the government must step in and set rules to help the people. And the biggest one, let's go to hard money. Now, when Jackson said hard money, anybody know what that means? Yeah, specie, gold and silver coin. The thought was, if we don't have hard money, it'll be harder to go in debt and harder to speculate. I have to be very clear. This is the exact worst thing you can do. So Jackson is completely wrong on this prescription. He didn't understand. But it was a gut reaction against speculation. It was a gut reaction into get-rich schemes that people have. But he also thought that governments must step in for the common good. This is a Jackson quote. We as a nation must unify to have shared values and shared purpose. And that's part of the reason why he would be a supporter, even though he didn't quite understand all the details about it, of labor unions. And this is going to be the beginning. You don't need to write the quote down. I just want to show you that quote. The beginning of liberal economics. Remember laissez-faire and Hamiltonian was conservative? There's no real prescription yet on liberal economics. But it's this knowledge of what's liberal economics that monopolies and speculation could destroy the country. And this will happen time after time, leading to panics and economic disaster, then another boom and bubble, and prices go up, and then they'll all crash over and over and over again. And this would eventually lead to the beginnings of kind of an economic theory at the end of the century. Well, you see this in the progressive era, and we got to use a couple of Roosevelts here, like Teddy Roosevelt in the early century, and then Franklin Roosevelt in the New Deal. But we haven't had a truly liberal president of the United States since Lyndon Johnson. Economically, we've had only conservative presidents since. Different degrees of conservative. Biden was always very conservative. He's probably a little bit more liberal than he used to be, but still conservative. So this is a cartoon showing Jackson fighting the good fight. This is Nicholas Biddle, the president of the bank. And there's Jackson. Their bare knuckle boxing was, well, boxing. It was obviously bare knuckle at that time. And you fight until somebody submits. It was really popular. And so in Jackson's corner, there's Martin VanBuren, a soldier representing kind of every man. Here's Webster and Daniel, or Henry Clay in Biddle's corner. She's supposed to represent the wealthy. With a very frilly dress. She has good diet, so she's, the whole idea is you're the heavier, you have a good diet, therefore you're rich. And port was kind of a refined wine that was really a very popular drink of the wealthy. Here, you have the commoner, drinking old-fashioned whiskey. A commoner's drink. And how do we know he's a commoner and represents democracy? There's a cat on his head. Yes, obviously, cat on his head. There's a bunch of pictures of people with cats on their head, and I haven't 100% figured that out. This was a time where coonskin hats, like my Daniel Boone with the coonskin hat, were popular, but no one actually wore them. But as we all know, then cats and what food represents democracy? Cats and cheese. And if you're opposed to cats and/or cheese, you are a tyrant. So with that, here's the battle. Nicholas Biddle, the president of the bank, here he's drawn as a 13-year-old, and Andrew Jackson. And here's Jackson's argument. The bus has too much power. The bus can make or break the economy. The bank's charter was that they could issue currency and therefore either pump money into the economy or take it out through member banks of the national bank system. But Jackson said, couldn't Biddle raise or lower the money supply for personal gain? Because who elected Biddle? Nobody. All this power, and he's not elected. He's not elected. It's the concentration of power into unelected people. And what does he care about? Jackson said the most important people are the owners of the bank, stockholders, because this is the first corporation. There was joint stock company, but this is the first modern corporation. Soon to be, the law will be set up. It's coming from Belgium at this time. And Jackson said they could play with the money supply to get rich. And don't forget, inflation or deflation means a lot of, can be a lot of difference in people's lives. Inflation can help creditors. Deflation help, inflation can help debtors. Deflation can help creditors. So, in the election of 1832, Jackson fought for okay, I was looking down the hall and I could see there's a hand moving. All I could see was a hand. Like someone against the wall. And so I had to look, it was kind of giving me just a hand. Somebody was standing there doing this. Henry Clay is going to run against Andrew Jackson. And Clay wanted to make the bank an issue. And so 4 years before the charter was up, he pushed it through Congress, Henry Clay. Because Clay believed everybody loved the bank. Clay honestly believed that. And he thought if Jackson vetoed the bank bill, it will crush him in the election. And this is a very ghastly picture of Henry Clay using the bank issue to shut Jackson's mouth because he's sewing it shut. You see the needle? Look at the needle. Well, Jackson vetoed. Jackson vetoed the bank. So we're not going to recharter. And Clay thought, got him. The people love the bank. Well, this might shock you. People actually don't like banks. Nobody likes the person or the entity you owe money to. Nobody does. So Jackson vetoed it. Jackson would be the first president to use the veto as a political tool. I need a drink of water. The first president. In fact, he was the first president. He would issue 12 vetoes. His enemies would say he's doing it like a tyrant. That picture on the left, one of the most famous ones, is why Jackson acting like the king, standing on the Constitution. His orb in his left hand is the veto. Is he the tyrant, reigning over us like a despot? Or is he the man of the people? So this picture is Jackson as a big cat. Yes, we're once again back to cat equaling democracy. Cat, saving the granary and the people from all the rats, and that's Henry Clay right there. Another gruesome picture. Yes, I love the cat. I wish I had a better picture of that. So, Jackson vetoed it. Clay thought, I will win the presidency, no doubt. Did he? No. It was a disaster. Jackson would win big and say, hey, I need to get rid of the bank. He would see this vote as a mandate to destroy the Bank of the United States. Jackson won an overwhelming victory. You notice the old anti-Mason party actually had a few votes. South Carolina, they said that was right before nullification, so they picked their own person and voted for him, their governor. So Jackson's going to destroy the bank. Clay just couldn't figure out, how did I lose? So what Jackson did is he pulled all the government receipts out of the Bank of the United States. Government receipts is a way to say tax revenues. That was supposed to go into the bank to back up currency. Instead, the government revenues went into pet banks. That's what the derogatory name given to state banks. And so they would disperse the money into state banks, and they would start loaning money out also to other banks. Now, took away the bank's ability to totally back up currency, but there were no rules on state banks. So also these pet banks had money. Now they thought this decree would hurt the bank. Remember that picture I showed you of the Bank of the United States of the columns? Here are the columns coming down. Here's Jackson decreeing money will be taken out. And here's all the supporters running away, including Beelzebub, the devil running away here too. Now, here's the problem. Without rules, all these banks, soon to be dubbed wildcat banks, the state banks started making all kinds of risky loans. If banks have money, they see a way to try to leverage this into more by loaning it out and getting more interest. So they made risky loans. For what? People started taking this money and buying land in the West. They began to speculate, and it fueled land speculation. All this land was being opened up. Yes, with a tie-in to Indian removal. So this is where Jackson did not have a good prescription. He knew the Bank of the United States was problematic, and he would turn out to be right. But his prescription didn't work. Biddle was furious. And what did Biddle do? Biddle decided, I'll show you. At the same time, he began to take money out of circulation. Here is a national bank note from the 1830s. He took money out of circulation, creating deflation. He is going to purposely try to destroy the economy to show why we need a bank. So for his own personal gain, he will bring the economy down. And he'll punish Jackson. Isn't this exactly what Jackson said he would do? This is going to help lead to the Panic of 1837, an economic disaster. By the way, here's Biddle forcing the bank to puke up gold coins. I don't know a lot of what's going on in these cartoons, but he's puking up gold. And my answer to that is, why not? So with that, so Biddle's going to destroy the economy, but Jackson's also panicking. All this speculation, land prices are going out of the world, and people are borrowing money to do it, and Jackson knows small farmers are going to be crushed. So he decides to stop this with it's not a terrible idea, but it was done in such a ham-handed way, it failed. It's called the specie circular. Jackson. That's actually supposed to be a cur dog, a starving dog. And what it is this person's going to Illinois with the land. They thought they're going to get rich going to Illinois. And this is, I've been there, and this is a starving family leaving Illinois. So that's what that is. So Jackson issued this. You can only buy federal land with specie. He thought this would stop the bubble in land prices. Bubbles where prices grow greater than the value. The problem with the bubble is when prices begin to fall, it literally pops and prices collapse. Now the thought was, if we use just hard money, this would bring the prices down. But by doing it in such a ham-handed way, this, along with Biddle, would lead to the bubble just exploding. Boom, gone. And prices dropped out of the world. And people borrowed money to buy this land, and now they can't pay their debts. It started in 1836, but would blow up in 1837. This actually is not a terrible idea. They just didn't have the tools and the mechanism to do it in the right way. Here's Jackson, though, fighting off the Miniheaded Beast. This was still seen. The Miniheaded Beast is the bank. Yes.
Could you go back for a second?
The Miniheaded Beast was the bank. You can see all these pictures of corporations as a Miniheaded Beast. But 1836, there's going to be an election. It's literally happening right now, but they didn't realize it yet. Jackson's vice president, old Kinderhook, Martin VanBuren, another man of incredibly humble means, he would win an election over 3 ways. 3 Whigs ran with an effort to split the Electoral College, so going to the House. It failed, and VanBuren was elected president. South Carolina ran their own man again, still mad about nullification. You might recognize some of these names, Daniel Webster, but also William Henry Harrison, old Tippecanoe. VanBuren won. He's elected, and the whole thing fell apart. The worst economic crisis that hit the country up to that time, the Panic of 1837. All that speculation, land, but also the new wonder technology of railroads. When the bubble burst, partially because of the specie circular, but Biddle purposely led this, destroyed the economy. All of a sudden, prices tumbled. Now, this can help creditors, but the problem is this. People couldn't pay back their loans. And banks who made risky loans, they went out of business. All of a sudden, all these banks went out of business. And if you had money in a savings account in one of these banks, what happens? What happened to that savings account if it went out of business? Poof. And every other bank, the banks that survived, they quit loaning money. And that's going to lead to a horrible economic depression. And the first time in American history, there's going to be large numbers of something that's completely new, unemployed people. Remember the wage system. Also, there's more people than ever before working for a wage, and if those companies can't sell their goods or go out of business, people lose their job and starve. You can imagine what they call it? VanBuren's depression. Get it? VanBuren. Aha! But here is they're in a home, and here comes the foreclosure. So Jackson trying to protect the common man. Yeah. And on that note, (24 or 25 questions. Sound good? I can't remember exactly. 3 short IDs. Are you excited? Did you look for the test?
Yeah. When you said bank war, you said that was number 3.
Yeah, the third big issue.
Oh.
Indian removal, nullification, and bank war. And all of them, in Jackson's point of view, he's helping the common man.
Okay.
Obviously, there's some inconsistencies there.